Mario Party Superstars is the Mario Party game that I've been waiting years for, and to celebrate Mario Party returning to form, naturally, I've got to rank all 100 minigames. And I know hearing Mario Party in the same sentence as 100 probably made you instinctually worried, but things are better now. Also, real quick, I'm not going to be including any of the item minigames as they kinda just feel like their own thing. And also, this is just my list with my personal preferences of these minigames. Anyways, enough of that, we have 100 minigames to rank, so let's go! Number 100, Tug of War. You know, the one where they have to literally give a warning not to use your palm on the control stick right before playing? Anyways, this is a 1v3 minigame where both sides are trying to rotate the control stick as fast as they can to pull the other side into a piranha plant-filled doom, and I feel like they should have just made this into a button mashing contest. Along with some legit issues with the control stick rotating, it's also just an unsatisfying minigame to play. Number 99, Trapeze Artist. There are a bunch of Goombas in a pen, and you have to drop a cage down and capture as many Goombas as you can, with normal Goombas counting as 1 point and golden Goombas counting for 3 points. You only get one go at dropping the cage, making this a short-lived minigame. It's just pretty dull to me, which is why it ranks towards the bottom. Number 98, Stick and Spin. A duel minigame where you and your opponent are dropping balls onto a circular board that you spin around, where you try to make combos of at least 5 balls of the same color that will send connected number balls to your opponent's side, with the loser being the first one that has 10 balls out of the circle. This is a perfectly fine game, but I'd hardly call it a minigame, as some of the matches I've had in this one literally went on for 10 minutes. That's definitely too jarring to the pace of things compared to the rest of the minigames, and I also didn't find this one to be very interesting. Number 97, Castaways. Hey, another control stick rotating minigame. You cast out your glove fishing rod and try to grab items that'll give you 1, 5, or 10 coins, and then you reel it in by rotating the control stick. It's a pretty awkward feeling minigame for me, as the timing of casting out your glove can be tricky to get your hands around. And when you factor in the control stick rotating element as well, this one doesn't do much for me. Number 96, Tackle Takedown. A 1v3 minigame where the goal of the 3 players is to tackle the solo player that has a football and is trying to get to the end zone. The solo player also has 3 boosts they can use to get a brief increase in speed. This one can be kind of fun at times when you're able to juke out your opponents as the solo player, but this minigame is so short-lived and doesn't do anything really interesting. Number 95, Beach Volley Folly. A 2v2 minigame where you play a game of beach volleyball with the first team to score 7 wins. It's just a pretty bare-bones take on volleyball, as you just run around, hit the ball, and spike it in a very unsatisfying manner whenever the chance pops up. Number 94, Ice Hockey. Just like Beach Volley Folly, only now it's a bare-bones version of hockey. It's a 2v2 minigame where you and your teammate are trying to score on the opposing team's goal. There's a little more here since there's a face-off every time a goal is scored, and you have a choice of a normal shot or a power shot, as well as a time limit so the minigame doesn't drag on. It's still nothing too interesting, but a step up from Beach Volley Folly. Number 93, River Raiders. A 1v3 coin minigame where the solo player is driving a boat that's pulling the 3 players on green shells, with everyone trying to collect as many coins as they can. You also have to avoid hitting logs, as they will temporarily stun you. This is a pretty unbalanced minigame, as the player in front has such a greater opportunity to collect the coins because of their increased range due to having a boat, leaving the 3 that are behind with only scraps. It also doesn't feel great to control, as moving your character feels like you're dragging a stick through mud. Number 92, Shell Soccer. A 2v2 minigame where you're trying to take a shell and kick away the other team's Goombas before they take out yours. The Goombas add a fun element to things, and you can slide into your opponents to stun them, which... how can that happen? Did someone pay off the refs or something? But besides that, it's just an extremely simple version of soccer. And hold up, why are these Goombas so excited to get a shell kicked at them? Number 91, Quicksand Cache. Another 1v3 coin minigame where the solo player is in the middle controlling the direction of the sand, trying to pull the coins in as well as the other 3 players. The 3 players are trying to avoid getting sucked in as well as grabbing as many coins as possible. It's a pretty to-the-point minigame that's usually in favor of the 3 players because if they spread out enough, they're more than likely going to get most of the coins. Number 90, Piranha's Pursuit. One player scampers away on a skateboard by button mashing and has to avoid obstacles while the other 3 players ground pound on a rain cloud to grow PD Piranha and make him go faster in an attempt to catch the solo player. This one is kinda cool in concept, but in my experience it almost always goes the way of the solo player and is more boring to play for the 3 players, making this a lackluster minigame for me. Number 89, Spotlight Swim. a 1v3 minigame where the 3 players all have to simultaneously shine their spotlight on the solo player in the water to win. The solo player can also dive underwater to temporarily throw off the other 3 players. This has to be one of the more unbalanced 1v3 minigames out there, as it's so hard for the solo player to avoid the spotlights with such a limiting set of moves. Number 88, Hammer Drop. A coin minigame where a hammer bro is on a cloud floating around and will throw coins and hammers out, and you have to collect as many coins as possible while avoiding getting stunned by the hammers. You can get some pretty awesome coin totals from this one if you're on your game, but ultimately there's not much substance to this minigame in my opinion. Number 87, Winner or Dinner. A 2v2 coin minigame where you're running around a fountain filled with spinies and piranha plants trying to collect as many coins as possible without getting gobbled up and spit out of the arena temporarily by a piranha plant. This minigame is very similar to Hammer Drop, only Winner or Dinner has a little more going on, putting it one spot higher on the list for me. Number 86, Puddle Paddle. A 2v2 coin minigame where you and your teammate paddle your raft around the water as a hammer bro stands in the center and throws out coins for you to collect. He'll also throw out hammers that you'll need to avoid as they will temporarily stun you. Another minigame that's extremely similar to Hammer Drop, but the element of it being team-based as well as paddling on the raft makes this minigame a little more interesting to me. Number 85, Mass Meteor. A duel minigame where you and your opponent are trying to swim your way through space avoiding meteors that will stun you in a race to the finish. The controls feel very floaty, and I know that was done on purpose because we're in space, but it's kinda tricky to get your hands around the momentum of the movements, leaving a lot to be desired here for me. Number 84, Paracel Plummet. A coin minigame where each player has an umbrella and is falling from the sky trying to collect as many coins as possible while avoiding hammers that are being thrown. You can use the umbrella to float up the screen to try to maneuver your way around the hammers and into more coins. It's another interesting twist on a coin minigame that's perfectly fine, but doesn't do anything really interesting to me. Number 83, Tube It or Lose It. One player controls a spiked machine and will try to pop the other 3 players' tubes while they're riding down a slope, with the team side winning if even one player makes it to the finish line. Each player can accelerate or brake to move around the screen, which does add a fun element to this minigame, but in my experience this one suffers from being unbalanced in favor of the solo player. Number 82, Etching Catch. You and your teammate have to draw a circle around a moving stamp as the line you draw slowly disappears as you continue to draw more, meaning that perfect teamwork is needed to make this work. Each stamp you circle gives 1 point, with the team that circles the most stamps being the winners. I found this minigame to be frustrating at times, but it still has a decent amount of charm to it, which keeps it further from the bottom. Number 81, Cashapult. A 2v2 coin minigame where you and your teammate will bounce each other into the sky to collect as many coins as possible with 2 jumps each. It's fun for what it is and conceptually interesting, especially as far as coin minigames go. Number 80, X-Ray Payday. A coin minigame where you stand in front of a conveyor belt and uncover blocks that have various things inside them that you can see ahead of time through the X-ray machine at the beginning of the conveyor belt. The thing is, the blocks will just keep coming quickly, so you'll have to do your best to remember which blocks have coins and which have bombs and boxing gloves that will both temporarily stun you. It's a pretty great feeling to uncover all the coin blocks correctly in this one. Number 79, Paint Misbehaven. A 2v2 minigame where your team is trying to shoot globs of paint at Goombas with the goal to have more be your team's color when the time runs out. This is a pretty to the point minigame that's fine and does what it's trying to do well, but doesn't have much going for it besides the concept, at least to me. Number 78, Flash Forward. You and the other players duke it out to get to the center of the platform for a picture that's about to be taken. It's definitely a fun minigame, but there's only one picture taken, making this one only last 10 seconds, which is too short-lived and makes Flash Forward end up feeling like a bite-sized version of Slapperazzi. Number 77, Roll Call. You have to count the total characters in the area, but there are different things in the environment that will try to trick you up, such as mushrooms or crates, as well as having to deal with all these characters constantly moving around. The player closest to the correct number wins. Between the different variations of characters you can get, I always found the Babam one to be the best, and some will explode during the minigame, making you need to factor that into the count. This is a perfectly fine minigame that can be a fun little brain teaser, but ultimately isn't anything super exciting to me. Number 76, Goomba Spotting. While looking through a pair of binoculars, you have to count the number of Goombas that scurry by. Only you don't have a counter on screen, and you can only count up, making you need to pay really close attention to things. I felt like this one was very similar to Roll Call, only I found Goomba Spotting to be a little more engaging. Number 75, Manner of Escape. Every player is on the top floor of a manor with a choice of doors, with one leading to the lower level, with the goal being to continue finding the correct door to get to the bottom level. It's completely luck-based, and once one player figures it out, each player will know which door to go through, essentially making it come down to who can find the correct door on the final floor first. I like the spooky manor vibe of this one, but that's about all it has going for it. Number 74, Bowser's Big Blast, the ultimate luck-based minigame. I know I probably have it ranked too high for that reason, but conceptually it's just fun. You have a selection of switches in front of a giant Bowser head, and each player will take turns pushing down the switch, with one of the group making the Bowser head blow up, eliminating the player in the process. This keeps going until one player is left standing. There's just so much tension in this minigame, especially as you're waiting to see if the switch you pressed will send you to your doom, or if steam will come out of Bowser's nose and you'll get to keep playing. At the end of the day though, it's all luck in this minigame, so I think this is as far up the list as this one can go. Number 73, Dark and Crispy. You have a small light around your character while standing on a platform, and in the dark is an angry Bowser who will try to ram into you and knock you off the platform, as well as try to toast you with his flame breath. You either have to survive for 30 seconds or be the last player left standing. It's definitely tense fumbling in the dark trying to make out where Bowser is, and it does what it's trying to do well. Number 72, Ice Rink Risk. You run around slipping on ice while trying to avoid spiny shells that are bouncing around. The minigame starts with one spiny shell, but eventually there will be multiple shells bouncing around, and they can also knock into each other, changing the direction they're bouncing around. Factor in some ice physics and you've got a chaotic minigame on your hands. It's a perfectly fine minigame, but to me it's more middle of the road. Number 71, Pit Boss. It's similar to Ice Rink Risk, only no ice physics. Bowser is throwing giant spiked balls in the pit and you have to run around trying to avoid them. When Bowser eventually throws a second and third spiked ball in the pit, they'll bounce off each other, so you have to anticipate their movement. You also can't jump, making this minigame feel pretty tense at times. If you survive past the third spiked ball though, once they run out of momentum, every player left standing wins, which is a little anticlimactic to me. Number 70, Dungeon Dash. A 2v2 minigame where you and your teammate have to alternately tilt the control stick left and right at the same time to move forward in an attempt to reach the exit first. If you and your teammate don't have your moves synced up though, you'll stumble and be unable to move for a couple of seconds. There are also a couple of hazards like a pit of lava that a small fireball will jump out of, as well as a thwomp that can flatten you. Timing your way around these hazards as well as getting your moves synced up with your teammate is a pretty fun feeling and makes this a solid minigame. Number 69, Hide and Sneak. A 1v3 minigame where the 3 players hide behind various cardboard set pieces and the 1 player has to guess where everyone is hiding after the curtain uncovers the stage. After every guess by the solo player, everything will reset and there'll be 1 less set piece. Since there are 4 set pieces, the solo player has 3 guesses. This minigame has a lot of charm for sure, but this is ultimately just a guessing game. Number 68, Mecha Marathon. You gotta mash A and B as fast as humanly possible for 10 seconds to wind up your fly guy and then watch to see whose fly guy goes the furthest. Personally, I'm just not the biggest fan of minigames that are only button mashing with no other elements to them, but this is still a solid minigame nonetheless. Number 67, Pokey Pummel. You have to button mash as fast as you can to hammer away your Pokey faster than the other players. This is essentially the same thing as Mecha Marathon, but I rank this one higher mostly because the concept of pummeling away the Pokey is more interesting, and you can see in real time how you're stacking up to your opponents. Number 66, Vine with Me. A dual minigame where you're swinging on vines racing your opponent to the finish. You have to time your jumps from vine to vine, and patience is key as the vines are all moving at different speeds. If you fall, it'll take a couple seconds to get back to your vine. You need to be very precise with your jumps because the window to grab the next vine can be a little punishing at times, but it's still a fun minigame with a fun concept nonetheless. Number 65, Hand Car Havoc. A 2v2 minigame where you and your teammate have to button mash to move a hand car along a railway while also shifting your weight properly around all the twists and turns of the track. It's a decent button masher with a little more to it than some of the others we've seen so far on this list. Number 64, Snow World. It's a snowboarding contest where the player that can pull off the most rotating spins as they can after jumping off the ramp wins. You have to press the A, B, Y, and X buttons in that order to do a full rotation, and you keep repeating that while in midair. It's a cool feeling to pull off a crazy amount of rotations, but this minigame doesn't do much else besides that for me. Number 63, Spin Doctor. A dual minigame where you and your opponent are navigating a maze with multiple spinning platforms with some only making partial rotations, meaning you need to find the right combination of paths to get to the end before your opponent does. It's frantic fun that can also lead to some frustration if you keep coming up at dead ends though. Number 62, Arch Arrival. a 1v3 minigame where the solo player is trying to shoot the other 3 players as wood pictures of themselves with a bow and arrow. The 3 players need to avoid getting hit, but will have to not get sandwiched by each other as well as the other 2 characters that are there as well. As the solo player, it can be satisfying to hit all the characters with your arrows, but as the 3, there's definitely more frustration to be had as there isn't much room to navigate. Number 61, Money Belts. This is a 1v3 coin minigame where everyone is on a conveyor belt trying to avoid getting knocked off by the oncoming candies, but also trying to collect as many coins as possible. The solo player is on the top conveyor belt that is a shorter length, but will also mean they'll have first dibs on any of the coins that come through, and the other 3 players will only be able to get what's left over. This has a lot of charm for a coin minigame, and while it's still too much in the solo player's favor, it still has more balance than something like River Raiders. Number 60, Nightlight Fright. Everyone is in a dark alleyway with a giant chain chomp approaching. You have to wait until the last possible moment to shine your flashlight and stop the chain chomp in its tracks, with the player that let the chain chomp get the closest winning. It's essentially a game of chicken, and what's cool is that the chain chomp is moving at different speeds on each player's screen, meaning you can't just assume that if everyone else is turned around that you'll have the win. Number 59, Title Toss. One player is on a boat in the center and is trying to knock the other 3 players off the edge by creating waves by jumping and ground pounding. There's some interesting strategy that can be had by the solo player by comboing quick small waves and bigger waves to disrupt the other 3 players. Number 58, Pogo A Go-Go. One player is controlling the direction of a platform in the sky with many holes throughout it, while the other 3 players are trying to avoid falling through those holes while bouncing on a pogo stick. And I gotta admit, the controls really capture that feeling of bouncing on a pogo stick well. Conceptually, I found this minigame to be really cool, but it's really easy for the team of players to come out on top in this one. Number 57, Squared Away. A 1v3 minigame where the solo player controls a tiny box that moves fast, and the other 3 players control bigger boxes that cover more ground, but move at slower, clunkier speeds in an attempt to crush the solo player. As the solo player, it's very fun anticipating the other player's moves, and to just miss getting swashed. But for the team side, it's pretty average as far as fun gameplay goes. Plus, if you have a solo player that has a good feel for this minigame, they'll almost always win. Number 56, Picking Panic. You and your teammate need to toss cherries from one to the other and then drop it in a basket while swinging upside down from Woody. It's all about getting the timing right on both ends, and when you and your teammate are in sync, it's a great feeling. But besides that, this minigame is really simple and to the point. Number 55, Cake Factory. A 2v2 minigame where you and your teammate need to grab a cake and a strawberry off of conveyor belts to make as many cakes as you can. The thing is, you have to time it just right to grab the item off the conveyor belt, and if you mess up, your character will be stunned by their disappointment in themselves, which, come on Luigi, don't be so hard on yourself. Anyways, it gets pretty frantic in the end and is a cooler concept than Picking Panic, so that's why it edges that one out by 1 spot. Number 54, Look Away. A 1v3 minigame where the 3 players try to avoid looking the same direction that the 1 player is looking each time the music stops, and the 1 player has 5 tries to knock out the other 3 players. This can be pretty fun as once the music stops, everyone has a couple chances to change the direction they're looking at the last second, meaning it'll come down to who gets the last move in. Number 53, Bobsled Run. Teams of 2 race down a snowy course in a bobsled with speed boosts along the way. You also have to be sure not to fall off the course or you and your teammate will be out of the running. I think the most disappointing thing about this one is that in Mario Party 2 there were penguin bobsleds, and now it's just a couple of regular boring bobsleds. But it's still classic fun nonetheless. Number 52, Sky Pilots. You and your teammate are controlling this flying contraption with 1 player steering and the other player flapping its wings, and you have to avoid getting hit with cannonballs as well as exploding Bowser balloons. There are also rings of rainbows that will give you a speed boost if you fly through them. This minigame honestly just comes down to the steering player, but it's still a fun time. Number 51, Tipsy Tourney. Each player is on a tilting platform with the goal being to move a Koopa shell across each of the squares on the platform to uncover a picture with the first player to do so winning. It's charming and a fun challenge to use the momentum of the tilting platform to move the Koopa shell as efficiently as possible. Number 50, Catch You Letter. Shy Guy is overworked and so behind that all his letters burst out of his shop, and each player tries to help by picking up and handing the letters over to a frantic Shy Guy running all over the place. There are normal letters that are worth 1 point and love letters with hearts on them that are worth 3 points, because in case you didn't know, love is worth 3 points to Shy Guy. Anyways, it's a cute concept with some solid fun gameplay as well. Number 49, Coney Island. There are scoops of ice cream falling from the sky, which I really wish was a real thing, and your goal is to stack more scoops of ice cream on your cone than the other players. You have to find the shadows of the impending scoops falling from the sky and get there before anyone else does. This minigame has so much going for it, it can just be a little slow paced at times. Maybe if you could nudge the other players out of the way, it would have added just enough to it. Number 48, Later Skater. It's an ice skating race as everyone races around a course with the first to complete 5 laps being crowned the winner. You have to hug the inside of the course while also not bouncing off it slowing you down, making it a satisfying maneuver to pull off on each curve. Number 47, Coconut Conch. One player is rolling in a barrel while the other 3 are ground pounding on top of trees to try and drop coconuts on the solo player. This is a very fun one to play as the solo player as you have to manage your momentum while anticipating the moves of the other 3 players. And for the team side, landing that coconut on the one player in the barrel is fun to pull off too. Number 46, Goal! A 1v3 minigame where the one player is playing goalie and trying to prevent the other 3 players from getting 10 soccer balls into the goal. The solo player can lunge across the goal making some fun last second saves, but with a coordinated effort, the team side has a good chance as well, making this a fun time for both sides. Number 45, Rocky Road. While trying to enjoy a nice drive along the water, boulders start appearing in the middle of the road, and now you and your teammate need to break down the boulders with just your bare hands, which, that sounds painful. But the first team to break all of the boulders and get to the end of the road wins. You have jump kicks that do a little more damage, and you also have to make sure you don't accidentally hit your teammate and stun them, slowing your team down. It's a solid, fun beat-em-up type minigame that does what it's trying to do well. Number 44, Boulder Ball. One player is tossing boulders down a hill while the other 3 players are trying to get to the top of the hill. What could go wrong? Flattening. That's what could go wrong. But anyways, this is a pretty satisfying one to play on both sides, as tossing down boulders that flatten everyone is fun for the solo player, and dodging that and ruining their efforts is fun for the team side. Number 43, Dizzy Dancing. A spinning record sends you flying into the wall and now you're dizzy and your controls are all messed up. The goal is to figure out which direction moves you which way and to collect the most music notes. It's always fun to get your hands around the controls, and it really feels like a new challenge each time you play this minigame. Number 42, Sneak and Snore. Everyone is in a barrel and in a room with a sleeping chain chomp, and you must make your way towards said chain chomp and press a button to open the door to escape the room. The thing is though, the chain chomp will periodically wake up and you need to quickly hide in your barrel by staying still. If the chain chomp catches you, you're out. This is a minigame that's all about patience. If you get too ahead of yourself, it might as well be game over. It's also interesting because you can gauge how risky you want to be based on how the other players are doing. Number 41, Skewer Scurry. One player controls an onslaught of skewers that they can send in any direction, while the other 3 players have to figure out which direction they're coming from and hide behind blocks at the right angle to try to survive until the clock hits 0. The solo player can also pull off constant fake-outs at the last second, making this a pretty frantically fun minigame. Number 40, Motor Rooter. A duel minigame where you and your opponent are racing down a futuristic looking pipe at the same speed. There are speed boosts as well as amps along the way that will shock you and slow you down. I just really like the pacing of this minigame as it feels just right, and navigating your way through this course is just a very fun feeling to me. Number 39, Cheep Cheep Chase. Everyone is being chased by a giant Cheep Cheep that's gonna chomp us up if we don't button mash like crazy. Along with button mashing, you gotta time diving below mines just right, or else they'll stun you for a second and make you that much closer to being cheap cheap dinner. And while I've said I'm not too fond of button mashing minigames, I actually really like them when there's another element that's done well in them, and this is a great example of that. Number 38, Mario's Puzzle Party. You need to break colored blocks by connecting 2 or more of the same color to get points that will turn into bigger combos of points if that initial connection chains itself into even more matching blocks, with the first player getting to 100 points winning. I've never been really good at this minigame, but getting those huge chains of points is just such a great feeling. Number 37, Blockstar. Very similar to Mario's Puzzle Party, only now it's a duel minigame. A stack of blocks rises from the bottom of each player's screen, and you must connect 5 or more blocks of the same color while sending up and down facing arrows to your opponent, which will send stacks of brick blocks to their side, with the loser being the player whose stack gets too high for 5 seconds cumulatively. I just like the pacing of this one a little bit more than Mario's Puzzle Party, which is why I rank it a little higher. Number 36, Bounce and Trounce. Everyone is bouncing on a ball-like pogo stick trying to spin and knock the other players off the edge, while the platform itself will slowly fall apart square by square. And as the players in space decrease, this minigame only gets more intense. It almost feels like an alternate take on bumper balls, which is pretty cool as well. Number 35, Hot Rope Jump. Now this is classic Mario Party. There's a rope made of potaboos, you'll need to keep jumping over them until you're the last player standing, or until your booty gets toasted. The speed of the rope will steadily increase as the minigame goes on, but at a certain point will also abruptly slow down, keeping you on your toes. Maybe it's just nostalgia at this point, but this minigame has such a great blend of charm and fun to me. Number 34, Burn Style. It's like Hot Rope Jump, only you can move around, which in my opinion doesn't add much to it, since more than anything it'll just throw off your timing. It's also a 2v2 minigame in which just one of your team needs to outlast the other team jumping over the spiky turnstile to win. There's just a little more here compared to Hot Rope Jump, and that's why I rank it just slightly ahead. Number 33, Dinger Derby. Each player has 30 baseballs tossed at them by a pitching machine that will toss a variation of different types of pitches, and the winner is whoever is able to hit the most baseballs. This is the ultimate give and take minigame for me, as it's incredibly satisfying to hear that sound when the bat hits the baseball, and getting out a streak of multiple hits in a row is so fun. On the flip side, it's very frustrating when you just barely miss the baseballs and that snowballs into a ton of misses in a row. That being said, despite how much I suck at this minigame sometimes, it's still tons of fun. Number 32, Messy Memory. A bunch of items are lined up on a couple of shelves until a bunch of toads come in and mess it all up. It's up to you now to return each item to where it originally was, with the player closest to the correct order winning. You can also use a curtain to cover up your screen whenever you're finished to prevent anyone from cheating off you. Yoshi. But anyways, just like I mentioned with Dinger Derby, this is such a give or take minigame for me, as it will either make me feel really smart or like a complete idiot depending on how I do. Either way, it's a fun minigame with a lot of charm. Number 31, Bombs Away. Everyone is on a tiny island as it's being bombarded by cannonballs that will tilt the island around. You either got to survive until the clock hits 0 or until you're the last player standing. Another classic Mario Party minigame, and while I prefer the Mario Party 2 version, this one is still very fun. Number 30, Balloon Burst, a 2v2 minigame where you and your teammate pump up and try to pop a Bowser balloon before the other team does. And this is probably how Mario and friends let off some steam after dealing with all of Bowser's crap over the years, and I do have to say, watching that Bowser balloon pop is as satisfying as ever. Number 29, Leaf Leap. Everyone is jumping on the leaves of an ever-growing beanstalk that will literally take you into space, with the winner being the player that jumps the highest. You have to either jump up or to the left or right depending on the next leaf that appears, and if you jump the wrong way, you'll fall down to the nearest leaf in that direction. It's all about the reaction time of jumping to the next leaf, and it's a satisfying feeling when you get on a roll. Number 28, What Goes Up? Like Leaf Leap, only it's about platforming instead of reaction time. You have to jump on Koopa Troopas and clouds, with the player that jumps up the highest being the winner. If you fall, you'll fall down to the nearest cloud that you've reached. I'm all for a good platforming minigame, and this is one of the best for sure. Number 27, Storm Chasers. Each player is carrying a piranha plant, and you have to run around chasing a rain cloud to get water on your plants, with the winner being the player that got the most water on theirs. There are also Monty Moles roaming around that will stun you if you run into them. It just feels really great to pull off a run of like 5 seconds under the rain cloud as you're chasing it around. Number 26, Honeycomb Havoc. What's a party without the participants getting swarmed by bees? Not a Mario Party, that's for sure. Each player takes turns hitting a dice block that will either give them 1 or 2 fruit from the tree. The thing is, there are also beehives along the way, so you need to strategize which number you want to roll ahead of time to keep from getting attacked from the bees and eliminated. I really appreciate the strategy in this one, and in general think it's a bit of an underrated minigame. Number 25, Tick-Tock Hop. A duel minigame where you and your opponent are standing on a clock hand trying to jump over the swipe of the other clock hand that's spinning around. Eventually, the speed of the clock will increase, and even the clock hand that you're standing on will begin to move too, making this a frantic minigame that will constantly keep you on your toes. That, combined with the throwback to Tick-Tock Clock, makes it an easy decision to rank Tick-Tock Hop this high on the list. Number 24, Rapid River Race. It's a race to the finish where each player controls a motorboat and has to avoid urchins while navigating the water racetrack. The thing is, you can continually boost up your speed, but if you hit an urchin, you'll get stunned and knocked back down to the slowest speed. This adds a really interesting risk and reward element to this minigame that I find pretty fun. Number 23, Monty's Revenge. Monty Mole just played his Uno reverse card, and now he's trying to whack us. The goal is to keep your head out of the hole longer than any other player cumulatively. But if Monty hits you in the head, you'll be stunned for a couple seconds. Conceptually, it doesn't get too much better than this. There are just 22 other minigames I personally had more fun with. Number 22, The Final Countdown. There are multiple squares that continually count down, and when they hit 0, the floor will drop out, and if a player falls off the platform, they're eliminated. The square will then reset, and this will keep going until the clock hits 0 or until there's one player left standing. I love how fast and frantic the speed of the countdown gets in the last few seconds. Honestly, if that went on longer, this minigame would be much higher on the list. Number 21, Rockin Raceway. It's a rocking horse race where you alternately press L and R to rock your horse back and forth, but the thing is you have a stamina meter, and if you run out, you'll spin out and be stopped temporarily. This means you gotta find that sweet spot in the speed you're pressing your buttons and manage your stamina, which I think is a cool feature. There are also carrot signs that alternate between a normal carrot, which will briefly give you unlimited stamina so you can button mash away, and a poison carrot, which will briefly stun you. There's also a photo finish if it's a close race, adding another cool feature to an already fun minigame. Number 20, Reverse-A-Bomb. A 2v2 minigame where each team is frantically running up and down their side, pushing buttons that will send bombs on a conveyor belt towards their opponents. The goal is to either hit the other team 10 times, or to be the team that was hit the least when the timer runs out. Now this might be my Mario Party 4 bias showing, but I've always loved the frantic fun that comes with this minigame. Number 19, Bill Blasters. You're frantically spinning around with a cannon that will blast a bullet bill at your disposal, but it will only fire when you stop your spinning, meaning it's all about timing your stop just right in an attempt to hit the other players 3 times before getting hit 3 times yourself. Although if it hits their cannon, it won't do any damage. You can strategize who you want to go for, and even block another player's bullet bill with your own. There are just a lot of interesting aspects to this minigame. Number 18, Crazy Cutters. Each player has a jackhammer, and you have to trace the outline of a chain chomp, a blooper, or a boo, with the winner being the one who traced the line most accurately. I've always been a sucker for these tracing minigames, and this is one of the best for sure. Number 17, Trace Race. This one is actually the best tracing minigame, at least to me. You have to trace a line with a giant crayon more accurately than the opposing players do, with the screen auto-scrolling, meaning you can't get behind, or else when it comes to tracing any loops, you'll mess up for sure. Added elements like this is what puts Trace Race slightly above Crazy Cutters for me. Number 16, Bumper Balloon Cars. Everyone is driving a car with spikes on the front of their vehicle and a balloon on the back, with the goal being to pop every other player's balloon before they pop yours. I really like the tank controls you use to control the car, as well as the intense showdown that comes when there are just 2 players that are left. Number 15, Speed Hockey. You and your teammate are playing a game similar to air hockey, where you both are trying to knock a Koopa shell into the other team's goal, with the first team scoring 3 goals being the winner. The more the Koopa shell gets knocked around, the faster it will move, giving this minigame a very fun and frantic pace if there's enough of a back and forth. Honestly, it becomes more about playing defense when it gets to that point. Number 14, Paths of Peril. It's a race to the finish while navigating a very narrow path where falling off will stop you for a few seconds as you have to be saved. There are a couple junctions where you can go either left or right, with one way making you navigate a path with many turns, or a path where you can easily make your way across. Pulling off a run where you don't fall off a single time is such a great feeling, and while I'm sure my Mario Party 4 bias is coming through again, I can't help but love this minigame. Number 13, Snowball Summit. Everyone is on top of a snowy summit, and you need to create as big of a snowball as you can by rolling it around and then send it towards the opposing players to try and knock them off the edge. I'm not gonna lie, there aren't too many better feelings in this game than getting a snowball at full size and then kamehamehaing your opponents off the summit. Number 12, Chip Shot Challenge. It's Mario Party's take on Mario Golf, and while only being a chip shot, it's still pretty fun. Each player takes a turn taking a chip shot, with the player getting the closest to the hole being the winner. You have to aim your shot just right and give it just enough power, but it's such a cool feeling to get a hole in one. The turn order is randomized at the start, and there's definitely an advantage to the player going last since you can learn from each of the other players' attempts. Number 11, Facelift. Now if Balloon Burst wasn't Mario and friends letting off some steam after dealing with Bowser's crap, this definitely is. You have to as accurately as possible match the distorted image of Bowser with the Bowser in your screen by pulling on his cheeks, mouth, nose, and eyebrows, with the player coming the closest being the winner. It's a fun, classic time that's always good for a laugh or two. Number 10, Slot Car Derby. We finally reached the top 10, and this is a great place to start. You control a slot car by tilting the control stick forward in a race to finish 4 laps around the course. If you go too fast around the curves, however, you'll sputter and spin out. This brings an element of speed management to the table by releasing the control stick at the right time, which I think is really cool. It takes a minute to get your hands around the idea of it, but once it clicks, this minigame is tons of fun. Number 9, Eats a Pizza. the minigame I most wish I could recreate in real life. It's a 2v2 minigame where you and your teammate button mash and navigate your way as efficiently as possible to try and eat more pizza than the other team. Conceptually, gameplay-wise, and for pizza toppings, I gotta give this one a 10 out of 10. Number 8, Pushy Penguins. A swarm of penguins are all making their way to the freezing water and they have no manners whatsoever, as they'll just push you into the water if you're in their way. The goal is either to survive the penguins trying to push you into the water until the clock runs out, or to be the last one standing. Navigating your way through the barrage of penguins, trying to find narrow holes between them, and not getting stuck in front of a big boy is constant frantic fun. Number 7, Mush Pit. There are a bunch of blocks with one containing a mega mushroom, and the player who gets that mushroom will try to knock out the other players, but they'll only stay giant for a short while, and then the process will repeat until one player is left standing or until time runs out. And every piece of this is fun, even if you're the one dodging the player that has the mega mushroom. Although taking someone else's mega mushroom that they just knocked out of a block is probably a little more fun. Number 6, Bumper Balls. It's a simple yet fun minigame where each player runs on top of a ball trying to bounce every other player off the course. Maybe it's just me, but I feel like they finally found the right balance for this minigame, where originally the balls didn't bounce players enough, creating an endless cycle of draws. I feel like here the momentum and bounce from the hits actually does enough to knock a player around enough to mean something. Number 5, Shy Guy Says. Quite possibly the most iconic Mario Party minigame of all time. You have a pirate Shy Guy raising flags that you have to match, otherwise Shy Guy will cut your barrel loose and literally strand you at sea. Shy Guy is also always trying to fake you out, so your reaction time will really be tested here. It's tons of fun, and I also find it hilarious that if the remaining players get cut at the same time, they'll all still win, but are still floating away with the celebratory music going off. Number 4, Dungeon Duos. The ultimate 2v2 minigame for me. You and your teammate are trying to escape a dank dungeon by button mashing to help each other navigate obstacles, trying to find the correct warp pipes to move on, finished off by pumping up a hot air balloon to make your escape, with the first team to do all that being crowned the winner. There's so much going on in this minigame, and it's really frantic and engaging, especially if both teams are constantly on the same part of the minigame throughout the run. Number 3, Tread Carefully. Every character is put into a Koopa tank and it's a showdown of who can be the last player standing. You navigate around the arena, strategically using the pipes to avoid getting hit by the other player's cannonballs, while also trying to hit them with a normal shot as well as a lob shot that can shoot over said pipes, with 2 hits knocking a player out. There's a good deal of strategy in this minigame that I really appreciate that to me really isn't there in any other Mario Party minigame, but there are still 2 more that I find a little more fun. Number 2, Mushroom Mix-Up. Toad will raise a flag that corresponds to the color of the mushroom you need to get to as fast as possible, as the other mushrooms sink into the water, creating a mad dash to the lone remaining mushroom. This process repeats while the speed of things steadily increases until one player is left standing. There's so much frantic and intense energy to this one, whether it's everyone crowded on a single mushroom nudging each other to the edge, or jumping on top of other players just to stay in the game, or whether it's down to the final 2 players and you're in a showdown just barely making it to the ever speeding up mushrooms. This one is almost as fun as it gets. Number 1, Book Squirm. I know it's the basic choice, but it's my favorite Mario Party minigame ever. Anyways, everyone is on a page of a giant book as pages continually fall, with players needing to run to where a hole in the page will land to avoid getting squashed, with the pages slowly falling faster and faster after each one. The tense, frantic energy of trying to outlast your opponents when the pages are falling at a fast speed, to the great feeling you have to just barely making it to that hole in the page in time, are just some of the reasons why I love this minigame so much. Well, those are my rankings of every minigame in Mario Party Superstars. Comment down below what your favorite minigames are. Remember to give this video a like, because 1 like equals 1 scoop of ice cream that will fall from the sky. And be sure to subscribe and click that bell for more videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.